Chappell Roan is living proof that it takes 10 years to be an overnight success and that the universe is preparing you for your moment, even when you don't realize what that moment actually is yet. This girl was born in Willard, Missouri, which is a population of 6,000 people total. In just from January to April of this year, she was barely cracking 1 million monthly listeners. Now has over 17 million and is even selling out crowds larger than festival headliners like Ed Sheeran. In 2017, this girl got signed to a record label and then was dropped, had to move back home, was working out of a donut shop, a coffee shop for years. At one point, almost completely gave up on her dream and now is having one of the largest success stories of any artist we've seen in the past decade. And I could not be more excited to talk to you all about Chappell Roan today because her story is absolutely unreal. And this does not even begin to scratch the surface of some of the things she had to go through in order to get to where she was today. So welcome back. My name is Nikki, and I could not be more excited to chat with you all about Chappell. So I think really Chappell's career kind of breaks down into 3 major chapters for me. So starting in from like 2014 to 2020 is really this origin of her career, how she gets discovered from a small town in Missouri and makes it all the way to Los Angeles. Then I'd say this middle part of her career from about 2020 to 2022 is when she gets signed to a label, gets dropped to that label. And also, I think really in this time, you see her start to discover her sound. I think a lot of the earlier Chappell music is not Pink Pony Club and Feminine Phenomenon and the songs we know and love her for today. And then this last chapter is honestly like just really truly the past 6 months, but so much has happened in these 6 months that I wanted to break it all down and how, again, somebody can go from literally 17 times their size as an artist to, you know, opening for Olivia Rodrigo, performing at Coachella, selling out tickets across the country. Like, how does that happen so quickly? And what did she do to make it happen so quickly? So rewinding all the way back. Chappell was born in, again, Willard, Missouri, and this is pretty much a middle of nowhere town. So the only way for her to really get discovered was she uploaded covers to YouTube. And did you know that in 2014, Chappell Roan got discovered by Troye Sivan on Twitter before she had even created the name Chappell Roan? So he said, quote, "I've had this 16-year-old girl on repeat for 2 months. You have to listen to this, guys. Go send some love." This is on November 4th, 2014. And it is a picture of Kaylee Rose, which is Chappell Roan's real name, Kaylee Rose Stutz, and it is her song Die Young. At the time, Chappell had only been posting covers to YouTube, and Die Young is her first ever solo song or original song. And you can even see, like, she doesn't even have 7,000 subscribers at this time. And what's crazy is this starts like a Twitter thread where he's like, "Hey, this is her Twitter. Let's blow up Kaylee because I haven't even heard a voice like this since Adele." And funny enough, in the same thread, a time capsule of 2014, I would like to add, Connor Franta comes in and says, "Yes, give that vocally blessed goddess her well-deserved promo." Keep in mind, this is 3 years before she even gets signed to her first ever label. Kaylee posts after that the video's at 15,000 views and counting, and she's like, "This is amazing, and thank you so much to everyone who supported my music, and especially Troye Sivan." Little did either one of them know that they would both go on to be 2 of the biggest queer icons in pop music, especially youth like queer pop music in 2024. Again, literally 10 years later. It takes 10 years to become an overnight success. What do I always say? So that is, again, like such a beautiful story, and also has got me thinking, like, can we get a Chappell and Troye song? Like, that would eat. I know in a recent interview, Charlie XCX had mentioned that her dream artist to collaborate with right now was Chappell Roan. So I feel like the 3 of them could make an incredible song together that would absolutely just blow my mind. So fast forward to 2017, Chappell gets a record deal with Atlantic Records, which is a huge, huge record label. And she moves 1,600 miles to Los Angeles just to pursue this deal. And she has talked a lot about in her music and at this time that going from this very small town in Missouri to West Hollywood was like really the first time she ever felt surrounded and accepted for her queerness. And she felt like she could finally start writing songs as the real her, or at the very least about the sorts of life experiences she wanted to be writing about. So on August 3rd, 2017, she has her first single titled Good Hurt. September later that year, she releases her first EP. And then while under Atlantic, she went on tour opening for Vance Joy in 2017 and then Declan McKenna in 2018. And to me, I don't know what happened, but to me, this seems like Atlantic didn't really understand like the vision of her music, or at the very least wanted her to be a different artist than the Chappell we know today, right? Like Chappel Roan opening for an Olivia Rodrigo makes a lot of sense in terms of like musical styles, or at least like audience pop music for a very young audience. Declan McKenna and Vance Joy is very like more indie folk artists. And I think that maybe that's what they had wanted or expected from Chappell at this time, being she was this, you know, Midwest girl from Missouri, and thought that that was more of the sound that she was trying to lean into. 2020, Chappell has been releasing music through Atlantic, and now she's starting to write her first album. So she starts working with a producer you might be familiar with under the name of Dan Nigro. Dan Nigro is the same man who went on to produce a little album we like to call Sour by Olivia Rodrigo, which is the highest charting debut by any female artist ever in history. So she, on her first time working with him, writes the song Pink Pony Club. This is in 2020. And then later that year, Sour and Driver's License come out. So Dan Nigro gets a little bit busy producing for somebody else. But Pink Pony Club, I think, is really the song where you see she starts to discover her sound and like her themes as an artist. I mean, it's literally a song based off of the Abbey in West Hollywood, which is really funny, but it's about being in the club and like being very openly and outwardly gay, and how her thinking about like what her mother would think of that or what her family would think of that, but how happy and safe and excited she feels to be doing that finally. And I felt like that was such a beautifully thematic song to be the first song she ends up writing for what becomes Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. But this is 2 years before we even get to that point. But this song ends up flopping. Pink Pony Club was a total flop in the beginning, which is insane. But that is because this song came out in April of 2020, which is 1 month after the COVID-19 pandemic, which means that she had started writing it a few months before that. So to release a song that's very like gay pop music about a specific club that is closed in the middle of a global pandemic that would go on for like a subsequent 2 years, did not help the song, we'll say that much. So I believe this song ended up losing money and she gets dropped. Chappel Roan got dropped from Atlantic Records, and I bet they are kicking themselves over that decision now. Not only that, in the same week she gets dropped from her label, her partner of 4 years breaks up with her in the same week. And I believe that this is the person she later went on to write the song My Kink is Karma about, describing how this was somebody who essentially abandoned her at her lowest. And now that she has had this like immense success now, it feeds off of seeing this person like writhe in agony and how good that karmic retribution feels to her. But I mean, I'm sure this much have absolutely shattered her. Like, imagine if you got dropped by a label, then had to move back home because you could no longer financially support yourself. You're working out of a coffee shop. Then you had a producer you were making music with. He then goes to produce for a different artist. That artist becomes a 3-time Grammy winner and has the largest debut of any female artist in history. Like, I'm sure at some point you're like, could that have been me? Or what did I do wrong? Why wasn't that me? Like, it would eat me alive. It would eat me alive. I don't know how she did it, but like, that is such a piece of determination. And that's when I say like, this is right at, we're at 2020 now, and 2020 to 2022 is like just this immense low point of her career. I mean, like, she is like has to work at a production assistant. She's talked about how she's working multiple jobs at drive-thrus like to support herself. And still was not able to financially do that. So moves home to then continue doing this just to release as an independent artist. And I think too, again, like the way that the internet works and the way that, you know, music and media works is like you see just like this success. You know what I mean? Like someone releases a song, you randomly hear that song one day, it goes big, then they're on the cover of the magazine, then they're doing an interview, blah, blah, blah. And it feels so quick. It feels so sudden. It feels so magical. But at the end of the day, it takes 10 years to be an overnight success. Like you have to hone your craft and practice this for 10 years. For her, I mean, again, like her first cover that we're talking about in this thread with Troye Sivan is in 2014. And she's hitting her peak, or at least even just the start of what seems like a truly like a lifelong career in April of 2024. That is so much time. There's so many moments I'm sure she doubted herself, almost gave up, did give up for even months at a time, you know? And people don't see that and they don't feel that. You see the glamour. And I think it's important to realize and study and understand that that happens to everyone. It feels like this very deeply intrinsic thing to you where you see all these other people having amazing things around you and you feel like the outsider, or that you're not doing something right, without realizing that everybody else is also on that same timeline. They just didn't start at the same time as you or didn't come from the same place as you. And that is, again, like literally truly what the Chappel Roan story is. So she continues, I mean, is essentially back in Missouri for 2 years. 2022, she had finally saved enough money to move back to LA, but is still, again, working out of a donut shop. But by this time, Dan Nigro is finally free again to produce with her. So she gets a publishing deal with Sony, but continues to release as an independent artist. So this is when she starts to write the album, The Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. Her first single is Naked in Manhattan. Second single is Femininomenon. And did you know that Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess was not even supposed to be the album title? The album title was supposed to be Femininomenon, and that's actually why it is the first song on the album. But when she started telling her friends and her producers, like, oh, I'm working on this album, they're like, oh, what's the name of it? She was like, Femininomenon. And she said not a single person could repeat it back to her, nonetheless spell it. So she was like, well, if they can't say it or spell it, how are they going to find it on Spotify? How are they going to find it on Apple Music or anything? So she said that was an interesting moment for her where she kind of had to pivot. But what this album title became is Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess. And I think that there truly could not have been a better title for the album in multiple ways. One, I think this concept of like the rise and fall of blank is such a Gen Z internet format. Like it's a YouTube format. And like if I told anybody that my age that I'm friends with, like the rise and fall of blank, I've even made videos about the rise and fall of XYZ. They instantly know what that is. So I think that being a new artist, really targeting a young demographic, it's like a phrase that's almost like if you know, you know. You know what I mean? Like my mom wouldn't get the reference, but I absolutely do. And then two, I think even just thematically thinking about the album, it's the rise and fall of a Midwest princess. The rise is meant to symbolize like her origin story, like how she, grew up in this tiny town and discovered herself and the relationships she had there and how it was, being queer in such a very outwardly conservative place. And then this fall of the Midwest princess is her leaving that place and her moving to Los Angeles and her chasing her dreams and how she's not necessarily the Midwest princess anymore because now she's Chappel Roan. And that is really, really beautiful. And obviously she will always be like our Midwest princess. I love the title, but I think it's like so thematic to the music. And also I think it's cool. It will serve as like a time capsule years to come from now. If she becomes an artist with a discography of like 10 albums, that this rise and fall is such a specific reference to like 2024 internet culture that 2034, that will be like a really cool thing to talk about and analyze. After that, she releases the third single from this album, which is Casual. And Casual was the first song that really started to pick up in this way. But again, not like the Chappell we know. Like I think it maybe got 10 million streams over months, which sounds like a lot, but compared to a song like Good Luck Babe that got like 50 million streams in its first week. Like, you see how stark in contrast, like, and rapidly this progression picks up later on. I think Casual too, again, was like her just getting super gay. I'll say it. Lesbian pop music is having its year. Like Billie Eilish, Renee Rapp, Chappell Roan, like it really, I think, like pop music for gay people hasn't always been as represented from specifically like the woman's side. Like I can think of lots of like iconic gay male artists, or artists in that, you know, like you think of David Bowie's and Freddie Mercury's and stuff. But I don't think we had lesbian pop icons the same way we had a lot of gay male icons back in the day. And it's very interesting to think about too, with so much of her music being inspired by like very 80s sounds, but we'll get to that. So later that year, 2023, Chappel Roan signs to Island Records. Specifically, she signs to an imprint label under Island Records founded by Dan Nigro. Dan Nigro founded an entire label just to sign Chappell Roan. He was so shocked that another label dropped her. And once he had started producing music and working with her, he just fell in love with her and knew she was a star waiting to be born. So after he produced Sour and Guts for Olivia Rodrigo, he had a lot more leverage in the industry. And people were really looking at like, hey, who do you think the next big talent is, after he had done such wondrous work on Olivia's albums? So he said Chappell, and he created this entire imprint label called Amusement Records under Island Records, and she signed to it, and now she's been releasing through Island. But Dan Nigro has also produced for Conan Gray, Chappell Roan, Olivia Rodrigo. And when you think of people in music that really just get how to make music for a young audience, you know, I think from like the 2010s to now, you think of Jack Antonoff and how just about like every major artist at some point has worked with Jack Antonoff, or how the second he starts working with somebody, you see this like rapid progression of their music. And I think that comes from a really deep understanding of like what youth culture wants. And that's a very specific skill, especially when you consider that oftentimes these are like 40-year-old men with like wives and children, writing, like helping, you know, these very young artists produce music. But I think it's understanding of culture and understanding of like, what do young people want? And I think right now you could truly make the argument there's nobody who understands it more than Dan Nigro. Like, it truly feels like he is in this moment where everything he touches turns to gold. Like, I think this Conan Gray album is his best album. I think obviously both Olivia Rodrigo's albums are incredible, Grammy winning. And now you see Chappell Roan and how, you know, what happened as soon as he worked with her. So even too, I think like the Dan Nigro effect is an interesting thing we'll see in music for the years to come, of how, specifically, what is he doing with these artists? And two, like, you know, now I'm all ears. The next time I hear somebody's working with Dan Nigro, like I will be listening to their music first thing. So later that year, under Island Records, Chappell Roan releases Red Wine Supernova. And in the beginning, this song didn't really take off the way we know it to now, but it was highly critically acclaimed. I remember seeing multiple Billboard articles. They do, or a lot of music publications do this thing every year where they release a top 50 for the year, or even recently Apple did like a top 100 albums of all time. So it's writers and people who work in the industry that comprise these lists. And pretty much Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess, the album was on so many of them, and specifically the song Red Wine Supernova, but it didn't have streams. It wasn't crossing the 10 million stream mark in the way all of her other music really started to after that. But I think she really started to go viral and have these moments when it came to her opening on the Guts tour. And what's crazy is that Dan, the reason that Chappell Roan opened for Olivia Rodrigo is because of Dan Nigro. Dan was the one who introduced Chappell to Olivia and vice versa, and they absolutely fell in love with each other's music. And again, when I talk about it takes 10 years to be an overnight success, like there was a moment in 2020 where I'm sure she was like writhing in agony, or you know, that like it could have been me of seeing the success of this other young artist and really, you know, that's working with the producer you were just working with right after you got dropped from your label, and like how frustrating that might have been. But the universe was preparing her for her moment, because this girl needed to have her moment first so that she could really, really ascend to this grand stage. So that way on her next tour, when she got to pick who her openers were, she was going to pick this girl. And that was going to be Chappell's moment. And you cannot see how life is connecting these dots for you in ways that make no sense at all. But like that, when I hear like these tiny little moments and stuff like that, I'm like, that is part of something. Like the events had to happen in the order that they happened in. And it feels so weird. It's so easy to look at that retrospectively and be like, wow, so cool and beautiful. But living through it is not the same. And there's been moments of my life where I felt like everything around me was just crumbling. And I try to remind myself, I try to think of stories like this and how like the universe is preparing me for something, you know, and it's preparing you for something too. So fast forward to, again, rise and fall of a Midwest princess. January of this year, she has, I think, 1.3 million monthly listeners. Spotify put out this amazing infographic about how she was, when she released Red Wine Supernova, her monthly listeners were 600,000. Then when she releases Good Luck Babe, her monthly listeners were 3.5 million. And this month she is 18 million. Like that growth rate is like truly insane. And I think specifically the way that she did it and like did her promotion has so much to do with that. So again, she went on her first official tour for her album Rise and Fall of a Midwest Princess from September to November, very short, which is not common for like your own tour. However, that's because she knew she was going to go and open for Olivia. So February to April, she opens for the Guts tour. However, she makes the decision not to do like a full length tour. You know, generally there's multiple openers and stuff, but she was only an opener for 2 months. Why? So that she could play Coachella. So she made the choice to get off the tour to do Coachella. Not only that, in the same week, she releases the song Good Luck Babe, which is now her most street song. It ends up being her first song to ever debut in the Billboard Top 100 at 77th place. And like, this really changes everything. Not only that, in that same month, she does the NPR Tiny Desk. And NPR Tiny Desk was like such a career shifting moment for her too. I think I had heard of Chappel Roan, but the NPR Tiny Desk performance was when I was like, oh, I get it now. And I think that's for a few reasons. One, it's like such an interesting environment. Like, you very rarely do you see them ever perform like that closely, and you can really tell the way that they fill up the space of a room. But even like just watching her visually, and like how she was wearing this all pink, and I intentionally did the pink lipstick stain, and even took these little breaks to stop and like pretend to take a picture or text on her cell phone. Like, it was such a it was so camp. It was so intentionally over the top, and it was a performance. Like, it was an NPR Tiny Desk, but there's no way she was actually sending like a little text message on a flip phone in the middle of NPR, right? Like, it was for the bit, and it was for, she knew that like this was going to get clipped and people were going to run crazy with that. And to me, that is like such a sign of an artist, like a performer, somebody who just understands what will make people excited, and how sometimes that is, you coming up with a hot to go dance, or sometimes that's you just pulling out a flip phone in the middle of a performance. Like, it can truly be anything. And she has such an understanding of that with her demographic. And I think that is just like so important when we get to, again, like the visuals and the music itself. But I mean, in just these 3 months, like, you see how the second she releases Good Luck Babe, her monthly listeners spike like almost 10 million. And it's just truly so ridiculous how well thought out this release was, because Chappel Roan went to a Grammys party 2 months before the song Good Luck Babe came out. And she was wearing the entire like drag outfit of it. And I think at the time, nobody knew what it was a reference to, but it was actually her teasing the release of her next song. And again, this is like I think before she's even on Guts tour. So she's doing this when she has just like a few 100,000 monthly listeners, like as a bit. And again, to me, that's the sign of like somebody who just has such a clear artistic vision in what they do that she is willing to show up with like a pig nose on to a Grammys party because she's going to release something in 2 months after that, and had such a, you know, faith that that was going to be a good song and a good release and people were going to be excited about it, that she would do that 2 months before that even happened is so ridiculous to me. And when it comes to, you know, her artistry or just, and the artistry of any artist in general, I think it really always breaks down into 3 categories for me. There are writers, there's vocalists, and there's performers. And obviously, every single person does all 3. You could not be successful. You could not be in music without doing all 3. But when you think about like the foundation of somebody, I really think they have one that they lean into, or at the very least in the early stages of their career, is what they're known for, right? Like I think you think of a Taylor Swift, people talk about her as like a writer, or like a Lana Del Rey, I would think of the same thing. But I think of like a Doja Cat is like a performer. You know what I mean? Like when I'm getting viral videos of Doja Cat on my feed, it's her performing. Or even like a vocalist would be like an Ariana Grande, you know, and how like, again, she's an incredible performer. She's an incredible writer. But at the end of the day, what separates her from, I think, someone like a Taylor Swift is her vocal range. What separates a Taylor Swift from someone like an Ariana Grande is her ability to write. And Chappell to me is somebody who like truly from day one has had all 3: vocals, performing, and writing. And I will break it down for you. So vocals and just the sound of her music. One is very 80s inspired, which I think is something super interesting. I think 80s pop music is making such a big comeback right now. We have Chappel Roan, we have Conan Gray, whose entire album is so 80s inspired, also produces with Dan Nigro, and then Troye Sivan last year. Think of like Got Me Started, One of Your Girls. Like these songs are so much 80s inspired. Interesting that they're all gay too. So maybe it's just gay music is going very 80s, but I absolutely love it. And as somebody who, I mean, I didn't grow up in the 80s, but I don't remember having tons of like hearing that sound reflected from a queer perspective, or hearing love songs in that sound of even just a girl singing about a girl. You know what I mean? I think is so important for young people. It's important to hear that these things are like normal and can be portrayed through art in a very normal way. And that is how these things get destigmatized on a global scale, in my opinion. So she went, when the entire industry was going country, she went hyper gay pop music. And she has like a very specific formula to all of her music that works so well. Like every song starts out with like a talking intro. You know what I mean? Even think Good Luck, Babe. It's fine. It's cool. Red Wine Supernova, Hot to Go. It's like slow talking intro. Then she has the backup vocals come in, and then the beat comes in, and then it's like, you know. And again, like literally listen to this. Every single song she has follows this 3-act structure. It's talking intro to backup vocalist comes in to sudden beat drop to rapid increase in pace, and then like level 3 is like this chorus, and that's when she'll do like a big falsetto that like really contrasts this like level 2 or like slower talking part. So Good Luck, Babe, you know, she's good luck, babe, good luck, babe. Like, I'm not a singer, we don't need to comment on my singing, but like you can see how she does these like really sharp contrasts, and that's a very Dan Nigro special too. You think of like a song like Vampire, you know, it's fame fucker, dream crusher, bleeding me dry like a vampire. Burr, burr. You know, it's like slow, big payoff. And that is like something he's really good at incorporating into all of his music. And Chappell does that really, really well. And like, just you hear the range of, again, like her falsetto. There's a reason me attempting to do the Good Luck, Babe thing was so horrific and made you shut your ears. It's because I'm not a vocalist. She is. Number 2 is writing. And I think what people misunderstand about being a good writer is that they think being a good writer means it has to be like very deep, emotionally charged music 100% of the time. And that could not be further from the truth. Being a good writer is about being able to tell a compelling story in a way that drives a strong emotional response from the audience. Sometimes that can be a very sad emotional response, but sometimes it's a very happy and exciting emotional response, right? Like, there are songs that just make me want to move my body and dance. And like, that is a part of good writing. They wrote the song with that intention in mind. So when I think of someone like a Chappell, she does have depth in her songs, right? Good Luck Babe is about the idea of falling in love with somebody who has not accepted their sexuality, and how you have to make that call, that essentially that judgment call, that you cannot change this person and you cannot fix their trauma and baggage for them. And if they're unable to see that, then you have to move on. And she has lines like, I don't want to call it off, but you don't want to call it love. Or even like the bridge of the song is like, when you wake up next to him in the middle of the night with your head in your hands, you're nothing more than his wife. And when you think about me all these years ago, you're standing face to face with I told you so. Like, are you kidding me? The idea of her being like, you are nothing more than his wife. She's in a coffin. I'm sorry. Like, what a crazy line. And like, the idea of just being like, I know how you feel, but no matter what I do, I can't make this decision or this revelation for you. Like, that is an emotional discovery journey you need to go on. And if you're not willing to see that, good luck, babe. You know? And another song like on the album, or two other songs I just think have such depth that people don't talk about, is one is Coffee, where it's a song about how like meeting with an ex, and how she was like, no matter where I go or where I see you, all roads lead back to me wanting to go home with you. So the only place I can see you is for coffee, because that's the only place I know I won't fall for you again. It's like such a cool concept of a song, and so relatable. Or and I've been in situations where like I knew somebody wasn't good for me, but you see them and you just feel those emotions again, and they cloud your judgment. And how she knows that, and the only way she can say it is or the only way she can see this person is by getting coffee. And last is another song called Kaleidoscope, which is again not a popular song on the album, but it essentially, the concept of the song is how when you look through a kaleidoscope, you are seeing one image, but that image is reflected in 100 different ways, right? There's a bunch of different mirrors inside it, and sometimes you see it in different colors or different angles or different shapes. But at the end of the day, there is one image and there is one truth and one story that you're looking at. And how Kaleidoscope is a song about how she feels that way in relationships, or how sometimes when things end, you almost look at them through this kaleidoscope where you see it from so many different angles, or what you thought happened, but then you turmoil over it and you're like, oh, maybe they lied when they said that, or maybe at this point they were already talking to that person that they are now dating, or there's 1,000 different ways we overanalyze and we nitpick to the bone, to the point where we make ourselves miserable by fabricating these situations that never even existed. And that's because we are looking at this past through a kaleidoscope. We're seeing one story and one truth through 99 different versions of that truth that we fabricated in our own mind. And that, what a concept for a song. Are you kidding me? Why are we at one? Ghost Stream Kaleidoscope by Chappel Roan. But two, like that is such a writing with depth, right? But to contrast that, not all writing has to be deep for it to be good. Like, fun fact, Hot to Go was the last song written on the album. All 13 other songs were done, and she wanted to add one more song. Specifically, she wanted a song that people would perform to. She was like, I feel like we need like a dance song. She's like, I need something to perform on tour. So the entire concept of Hot to Go was with the HOTTOGO dance in mind. It was literally to be done as a bit on tour. And she wrote it to feel fun, to feel exciting, so that you want to be in a group with your friends screaming at the top of your lungs. And that, it's not a super emotionally charged song. It's fun pop music, but that is an intentional writing decision. And then when you see, next time you see a viral video on your For You page of Chappell or people at the concert doing the Hot to Go dance that has 3 million views, It's because she planned that. That's writing. That is music strategy. Again, I talked about this a long time ago with this concept of expectation variation. And this is something that Sabrina Carpenter has done so well as well, where if you want to have a viral moment, you have to set the expectation and your performance. However, there has to be a variation so that every single thing is not the same, or else what's the point? And the perfect example of this was like Sabrina Carpenter nonsense outros, right? You know, there is going to be a nonsense outro at the end of every performance. But what the outro is changes for every single city. So the second the song Nonsense is about to end, all 50,000 people in the crowd are pulling out their phone about to post about it. So that's 50,000 free posts for marketing for the artists. But two, you know that people will watch it multiple times, or even if they've been to other shows, want to see this specific outro because there's a variation. So they have that expectation, but there is some sort of variation to it to make it new and interesting. And like Hot to Go was her version of that. And I think this is also one of the songs that picked up on the album very early. Because of that, again, like the dance is so fun. And even if you look at the music video, it's about her like teaching people to dance. This is all intentional. Or even just like Red Wine Supernova, the line where it's like, I heard you like magic. I got a wand and a rabbit. Like, baby, let's get freaky, get kinky. Let's make this bed get squeaky is so witty. Like, it's so, again, she has such a wit. And I think if you even honestly listen to some of her music, with like the lyrics open on Spotify, you'll see how quickly there's just these little like gay innuendos. Like you don't know, sometimes a lot of people don't know what you're talking about unless she's gay. Like my mom doesn't know what a wand and a rabbit is, but I do. And again, that is what builds that feeling of community. And then last is her visual and her performance, where one of the pieces of magic of Chappell Roan is how she has really represented an underrepresented demographic. So I can think of 100 artists whose target audience is queer people, and I can think of 100 artists whose target audience is people in the Midwest. But there is only one Midwest princess. You know what I mean? Like specifically a core demographic of queer people in the Midwest, and how often those themes come up through her music. Again, like a song like Pink Pony Club is literally about moving from your small town to a major city and being surrounded by gay people for the first time, and what that feels like, what that sort of self-transformation process that you begin to go through is. Or how she has, I think really, I think when people think of a performer, they think of a dancer. You know, you think of a Beyonce, you think of a Doja Cat. But how Chappell is a performer is she does it through fashion. She creates a visual experience around the music. Like so much of these images have nothing to do with each other, but somehow feel like they're a part of like the same cinematic universe almost. Or even this was an image that they had posted on her official like fan page, and she even posted as well, what they were like themes for her tour, and how every single city had a different theme and wardrobe based off of a specific song. So you see the pink cowboy hats and boots and Dolly Parton, that's Pink Pony Club. Then you see this one that's all red and sad, that's My Kink is Karma. And she is creating this feeling of a performance through fashion, right? So like you resonate with this feeling of, let's use Pink Pony Club as an example. Pink Pony Club, you're a queer person, you've moved out of your small town, and you really like, relate to this experience. So you and all your friends who also relate to this experience and love this artist are going to see this person live, and you love that song. So you literally get to physically dress yourself up as like a physical manifestation of that art and of the story behind that art, and then are screaming it with your friends at the top of your lungs and at a concert room. Like that is so fun. That is how you create, again, an experience around the music. That's why you see all these videos of people at her concerts, and why she is, dressed as a butterfly in one, and then sitting in a giant coquette heart on the Tonight Show in another. But at the end of the day, these things feel like they tie to one another, and you could clearly see this. Again, like I always think too, like if I told you I was going to be Chappell Roan for Halloween, you can close your eyes and clearly like imagine that in some capacity, right? It's the white makeup, it's an orange wig, there's a pink cowboy hat somewhere, maybe. Like, you can see it. Or even when she does like this camo theme, you know, of like Midwest princess, how that has nothing to do at all with this with like this costume of her in angel wings or her as a butterfly at Coachella. But like, the themes of the music are leaving your small town to pursue your dreams. And, you know, that resonates with this like very Midwest audience and people who grew up in, and, you know, anywhere in the Midwest. And again, too, I think it's such a magic to hit such a specific demographic, but also huge. Like, she's from Missouri, but this isn't called the rise and fall of a Missouri princess. It's called the rise and fall of a Midwest princess, because now somebody in Colorado, somebody in Nevada, somebody in Oklahoma, somebody in Montana, like, you interpret it how you want to interpret it. And there's a beauty in that in art. That's like truly one of the powers, is leaving things like almost, you know, this perfect line of subjective so that people can begin to see themselves reflected in that. And again, me, like, I'm not even from the Midwest. I'm from Virginia. I'm from the South, technically. But like, the story resonates and the themes resonate with me so much that, you know, I'm like, okay, rise and fall of a Midwest prince. And that's Nikki Reardon. And that is where this visual element of her artistry comes out. And you even see things now like this Paper magazine shoot that just came out a few days ago. And how like camp that is, and how very, again, specifically her style. Like, I want you to look at these photos and say, like, you, like, Sabrina Carpenter couldn't have done this shoot. Olivia Rodrigo couldn't have done this shoot. Taylor Swift couldn't have done that shoot. Like, it doesn't make sense. But she has such a clear visual and brand and audience that will understand this, that people love it and they absolutely eat it up. And truly, I think she's like one of the only people right now that is giving us like early 2010s Lady Gaga level of visuals, or at least like a commitment to the performance. Like, it lives in my mind rent free, bro, eternally rent free. Lady Gaga being marched onto a red carpet inside of a giant egg, a plastic egg, did not come out at all. They had 4 men lifted up onto the stage. So when she starts singing music and hatches out of an egg live on stage. Why are we not doing that anymore? That is performance art. Like, I love that. I eat stuff like that up. And like, that is something I could totally see Chappell doing, or like, you know, leaning into that lane and that taking up that space that I feel like, because we haven't had a Gaga-esque figure in such a long time, that it's so refreshing to hear her like this. And I think, just in conclusion, I really want to talk about like what's next for her, because it feels like the sky is the limit and every single thing she does is somehow just bigger than the last. Like, I mean, literally last month, I remember her posting that she had her largest tour date ever in Richmond, Virginia. And then 2 weeks ago last week was Boston Calling. And then she had a larger audience than Ed Sheeran, the headliner. And you mean, you can literally like look at this video, you can't even see the end of the audience and how massive it is. And, you know, and I'm sure a month from now we'll see a next performance that's even bigger than this. So when I think of the future of Chappell's career, I mean, one, I'll knock on wood, I'll say it now. I think I have a prediction that Chappel Roan is for sure going to get a Best New Artist nomination at the Grammys. I haven't seen an artist have like this explosive of a blow up. I mean, since Olivia Rodrigo, truly, I think was the last person we saw have this like rapid of a success. And what I love about Chappell specifically is like, she's taking up a space nobody else is taking up right now, right? It's like this fusion of, you know, very Lady Gaga, Madonna-esque, and very, you know, the themes of the songs are very gay and very deeply tied to queer experiences, but the sound is very like 80s synth pop music. And like, nobody is doing even remotely close to any of that right now. And the fact that she tied it all together in a way that's so unique to her is so like, I mean, just as a consumer, I eat it up, but it's like so inspiring to me too, to see, again, you know, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success, and how none of these things would have happened to her if she didn't go through the unfortunate circumstances that she went through. Like, she wouldn't have been able to write a song like Good Luck Babe, her most popular song of all time, had she not had an unfortunate romance with somebody who was in the closet and didn't love her back. She wouldn't be able to write a song like My Kink is Karma if she didn't have an ex break up with her ex of 4 years, break up with her the same week she got dropped from her first label. Like, it seems like these were just in a vacuum objectively horrible circumstances that would be really emotionally distressful and painful. Yet when you look at it retrospectively, it is why she is here today. And it is what makes her such a compelling artist, is her ability to harness those emotions. And I think if you're thinking about your own life, think about that too. You know, like, you might think that these things that happen to you are what's going to kill your career or make you not successful, when in actuality, it's the emotion behind that experience that made you a better person and grew you into what you are today. And that's worth talking about. That's worth sharing. And I just think I'm so excited for the future of Chappell. I really think, knock on wood, she could do a album or EP this year, because Sabrina Carpenter just did one. They're both under Island Records, and I think they both very much understand the like fire that they have under them right now. And we've seen truly how I think like the artists getting the furthest right now are just the people releasing the most. Like, biggest artist in the world right now is Taylor Swift. Nobody has released more albums in the last 2 years than Taylor Swift. Or even I think of someone like in a complete opposite lane, in Ice Spice, who got a Grammy's Best New Artist nomination and has, to this day, never even released an album. But she was just like single every single month. Did an EP, was collaborated with Taylor, collaborated with the Pink Panthers, like, was just so hustling, putting things out, that it felt like this wave of momentum just never crashed. Like, it only got bigger and bigger and bigger. And I think we are seeing that happen with Chappell right now. And I'm manifesting it. Knock on wood. Please give me more music. But that was the untold lore of Chappel Roan. I hope you guys like. This was my first ever time doing this solo. It was kind of nerve-wracking, and I'll get better at it, I promise. But thank you so much, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this, and I really appreciate you sticking by me and watching this. And I will have more updates soon. Love you all. Have a great week.